it's some form of validation seeking, some existential validation to your external environment. The external environment being the person you're trying to translate the message to. So the subject today I wanted to speak about is arguments. Arguments, how we can approach them in a more nuanced way, an unforceful way, an unegoic way, and how to approach resistance without imposing on someone else's willpower. So, when we have a certain worldview, viewpoint, belief, idea, or whatever, it's very common to cling on to it and attach it as your identity. And another word for identity is ego. Ego. It's that simple. So when we approach some idea or belief and we hold it egoically as a part of our ego, it tends to have this side effect where it makes us can't accept that we can be wrong, or there's potential for us to be wrong, and we reject that, and we don't wish to even entertain the idea of that thing, of that possibility of us potentially being able to be wrong about something. Like everything is context dependent. You can't just say something is right or wrong universally. Everything is context dependent and situational dependent. But when we take an idea or belief system as part of our identity and hold it in an egoic way, when we are trying to translate that idea to another, it makes us take a very imposing delivery to our beliefs or idea, where we are trying to shape the other into what we wish them to be, what we want to see them be, because we cannot accept them just being what's right there, and that's not very compassionate. And that's robbing the other of their own autonomy or mindset or processing. That's another word for that, indoctrination. You don't want to indoctrinate your idea. That's not a very compassionate way of delivering your idea. And I'm not, before I go on to the next point, I'm not criticizing any religious fundamentalists, but you tend to see this pattern in evangelicals, where they are so obsessed with being right that they forcefully push the other to accept what they are suggesting. But what they don't understand is that pushy delivery will cause more resistance in the person who they're trying to make receive the message. But that's all because they're so pushy, because they have an ego attachment to whatever they're trying to translate to the person. And it's a more wise approach to simply translate your idea with no attachment to it. Because what you are is greater than some idea. That's if you believe that. If you don't, then of course you're going to be pushy about your idea. Because you don't believe that what you are is greater than this idea that you're translating. But moving on. So essentially it's just you kind of saying to yourself, I am the idea that I'm trying to translate to this person. And if this person does not accept it, they're not accepting me. So now I must push even more to be accepted. It's some form of validation seeking. Seeking some validation, some existential validation to your external environment. The external environment being the person you're trying to translate the message to. But there's a discerning approach to this. There's a more wise approach to delivery. When you're not so attached to your idea and you can accept the idea or entertain the fact that you could be wrong, even if you are 99% sure you are right, as long as there's this slight chance, this slight acceptance that you can be wrong, you start to let go of that ego attachment to whatever you're translating. And what does that look like when you are translating something unegoically, in a more conscious manner? What you will do is instead simply have the message as a possibility, translating the message as a possibility to the other, as a consideration, something for them to consider. Nothing more, nothing less. Whenever you come and say, hey, that's truth, and you must accept it, that's exactly what's going to make the other resist even more. But when you take this approach where you are just presenting a possibility, something to consider, painting a picture for the receiver of the message, you tend to have someone in a more receptive mode, and that's a very better environment to translate your idea, no? Isn't it? A receptive audience. But but even if you come across a non-receptive or rigid mind, or somebody with an unopen mind, very closed off or whatever, or resistive, doesn't bother you. Why? Why does it not bother you? Because you're compassionate to them. Because you are approaching your delivery in a wise manner. That means you have gained some bit of wisdom. That means because you have gained some bit of wisdom, you can be compassionate to their not understanding you. You can be compassionate and empathetic for them not understanding you. And you do not blame them for this. And you can accept them not understanding you. Because you are not attached to the idea that you're presenting. Therefore, your very existence doesn't depend on their acceptance of the message. That's very freeing. No, it's very freeing. And you can allow them to be, especially if you are very sure that the message that you are presenting is aligned with conscious development and doesn't rob them of their autonomous individuality. As long as you are sure that your message are aligned with those two morals or values, that means you can see them as just playing the fool, and you can allow them to be the fool. You can allow them to play it, because the fool isn't an identity or a label. It's an archetypal character that we all have. I can be a fool sometimes. And many do not wish to admit this simply because of ego. And I get it, I understand. Who wants to be labeled as the fool? No one wants to be labeled as the fool. But there's a lot of, in my personal experience, the fool has a lot of lessons encapsulated into that persona, into that archetypal persona. The fool is a very good teacher of life. Playing the fool can teach you a lot. And if you don't allow someone who is resisting your teaching or your message, or who's arguing against your viewpoint, if you don't allow them to play that fool or play that ignorant role of the fool, if you don't allow that to play out, then you might be corrupting their journey. You might be doing even more harm by trying to forcefully impose your viewpoint onto them. So allow fools to be, allow them, and that's a greater test of your compassion. You can be compassionate to the fool through their acceptance. You accept them for what they are and what they are presented to you presently. You're not just erratically trying to mold them into what you wish them to be or what you wish to see them be. So, but be careful, because you can start to look at people and say, oh, look at these fools, looking down. But nah, that's looking down on the fools is not a very compassionate way to view the fools, because what you judge in another, you slowly integrate it. It's like a projection. So you judging the fool in a negative light is essentially you becoming that very fool that you judge. It's very, very beautiful paradoxical effect going on here in emotional causal dynamics. But yeah, let fools be fools, and don't judge them for being fools. Be compassionate and empathetic to their ignorance, and that's a very wiser approach to relating to them. And the reason why you're compassionate and more empathetic towards them is because you can accept that you are also a fool. I am also a fool. Sometimes I'm also a fool. And it's very humbling to accept that. It's very freeing, because that's you accepting and acknowledging that you are not perfect. No one's perfect, everyone has flaws, and so do you. But when you that's also you accepting that there's nothing outside of you that's not also inside of you. Meaning you resonate and you love all, and you can relate to all. You can be compassionate to all. But yeah, that's the message I had to deliver today. Talking point. But yeah, I'll catch you on the next one. It's a funny story I want to start off with. So I started recording this exact video right like 20 minutes before this present moment, and I figured out the audio was silent. I turned off the audio was turned off on the recording software. So now I'm re-recording and it feels so ingenuine and recited, but hey, let's get through this thing.